Thanks again for participating and leaving comments. This book is Part 1B, an instructional guide written in 2013 about defense strategies against many attackers. For clarity purposes, it uses two contrasting paradigms, the resistance world and the energy world, to broaden people's perspectives when looking at the impossible, the defense against a well-armed multiple attack. Enjoy Part B, it introduces specific strategies. Abridged edition. The End of Martial Arts. Two Worlds. Part 1B. By Lormun Mac. Copyright 2013 Lormun Mac. This audio version is licensed for your personal enjoyment only. This audiobook may not be resold. Warning: it is strongly recommended that children and adults who are not experienced in martial arts should not attempt application of the principles of this book unless under the supervision of a currently certified instructor, coach in the fighting arts. Chapter 4, E Theory and the Mass Effect. To enter the energy world, your whole body has to act as one unit, not as a kinetic chain to produce power, but to take advantage of momentum. The mind needs to allow the body to achieve rapid mass acceleration straight to the source of the threat. The result is the obvious rapid rise of usable energy from the fast-moving mass. Once at speed, the maintenance of your energy at high speeds is referred to as energization. When energy levels are maintained at high levels, then you can stay in the energy world longer. This is achieved by understanding how the one system works when facing multiple sources of resistance. Simply, any part of your body cannot deviate from the path, otherwise, you have split the one system, which will interfere with the smooth runnings of your progress. To understand this, try running and punching together, or even try looking sideways. You will quickly notice how fast it disrupts the smooth rhythm of your natural running style. The practitioner of the energy world does not want to split the one system and interfere with one's progression. This can be better understood by not allowing parts of your body to move faster than any other part or away from the mass. This splits the system and slows your footwork, hampering progression towards an exit. As an example, a punch is where your arm moves faster than the rest of the body. To achieve high-speed strikes, you will need the feet to find grounding as a prerequisite before producing body torque to accelerate the limb away from the body. Striking systems are extremely satisfying to learn, but it is not the energy world. So, the weapon of choice in the energy world is the mass effect, in other words, taking advantage of the body's momentum, moving everything at speed while leaving nothing behind. The body has to act like a train in motion, where its mass movement is the key feature during any potential impact. Every aspect of the body moves in the same direction at speed, which is described as the one system. It is maintained by never splitting the one system by your urge to slow mass speed for a punch, kick, grab, or even attempt ducking and weaving. One area that lacks understanding is the mid-region of the body. It is what joins the lower body to the upper body, making it act much more like one complete system. Better understood as core control, easily improved by exercises and being mindful of its special role in mastering full coordination of the body. The simple act of even pushing a heavily laden cart up a hill informs you of the tremendous value of this part of the body to deliver full momentum. So, the mid-region holds the whole body together when it needs to travel across a space or when meeting resistance. Its aim is to economize the use of energy by an efficient transfer of force to the upper extremities, especially for fast movements like a punch. The mid-region essentially powers the upper body, but a less well-understood role is its ability to store energy by holding the body together when moving, when walking and running. Other understandings relate to helping in proprioceptive stability and balance control. What I want you to focus on is how easily it is forgotten during a fight or a survival situation. The mid-region likes to deactivate on impact for comfort, which splits the one system, leaving you with no momentum and energy reserves. The importance of the mid-region during fighting is well understood by most pundits. Therefore, developing and fine-tuning the mid-region is not simply a matter of building a strong set of stomach muscles. The mid-region link needs to be able to move in coordination with the rest of the body without hindering power transfer and energy storage. Core strength is at the center of any well-executed action. This is where the line blurs, as practitioners of well-executed actions struggle to be mindful enough of the value of the continuous use of the core. Easily understood by the deactivation of the core when a person struggles to push a greater force aligning the body in a wedge-like fashion. Try pushing a wall to identify the wedge response and core deactivation. The resulting outcome is a partial activation of the whole body trapped in a rigid linear position. It is only when the body is moving as one unit that you use your core storage effectively to take advantage of your body's momentum. E-theory. E-theory is the conceptualization of how to join the upper body to the lower body via the mid-region during battle. As previously mentioned, the mid-region becomes a weak link when meeting unexpected forces under time pressures. In the energy world, all parts of the body must all move in a uniform direction so it can accelerate the overall mass to increase potential energy. The body is designed to move in an erect fashion utilizing the ground as the resisting force to allow freedom of ambulation. Our interaction with the ground stimulates unconscious processes to hold the body together so it aligns and coordinates the bones and soft tissue to all move smoothly in a desired direction. Simply walking, running and jumping are all possible due to ground forces. None of this can happen in outer space. Understanding the value of gravity, the body can now move forward in a controlled way, storing and releasing large amounts of energy within our biological springs as well as mass movement or momentum. E-theory is a way of simplifying the velocity vectors of the hips, chest and head in the same direction always. When all three velocity vectors are not maintained, your forward progression is stalling and the available energy is declining. The ineffectual E is easily identified by a slowing of the footwork and the bending in the mid-region, which indicates stalling. No matter how hard you have trained to strengthen the mid-region on its own, it is still the weakest area if you bend. It is always the weakest link in the chain. If you lose mid-region coordination, it will weaken all other movements of the body. Another important way of viewing the E is by recognizing that the horizontal three lines represent equal force lines all directed forward. The equality of the forces is just as important as equal velocities. Force distribution and velocities for all heights always assures correct posture. When the forces are unequal, the result is bending of the mid-region. The body begins to look more like a wedge, recognized best when leaning against the resistance of a wall. The two most common mid-region failures are related to pushing and lunging forward. In battle, the wedged person usually struggles with the opponent and stops moving altogether, they stall. The wedging reaction in a group attack is disastrous because your progress has slowed, allowing more time for group members to focus on you. This situation is easy pickings for a group. When you begin training E-theory, it is as simple as keeping the lower back vertical and your hands in front of you, all moving at the same pace as the feet. Easily simulated when pushing a cart. The test of whether you are doing it correctly in any situation is to check if you can scratch your nose with one hand without stopping. It is important to never let your footwork stop you moving consistently. This means no stopping or slowing of your footwork to reload the body to execute that big hit. To stay in the energy world, you have to maintain acceleration of the one system and avoid pushing and striking with your limbs. If your feet are the wheels of your system, they are always moving to keep the hips and chest and head moving at a similar rate. Effective footwork is the cornerstone of E-theory. If you doubt the effectiveness of the mass effect and E-theory, ask yourself why you don't stand in front of a moving train. The double E. The more sophisticated E-theory view is the double E. Techniques that rely on striking power and reach need the body to twist relative to a pivot point. In the energy world, a person derives their power from the mass effect, that is the momentum produced by the moving body requiring unhindered acceleration of all parts of the body in the same direction. The double E aims for a more inclusive depiction where both sides of the body are shown as moving, at the same pace and direction, producing double power lines projecting from both shoulders and hips. This means both sides of the system are fully energized and moving freely. The double E is about powering your body from both sides at the same time, as if walking forward trying to wriggle a heavy wheelbarrow over and through some resistance. The whole body still moves at the same pace forward to maintain the E. The concept of double power lines can be visualized as power lines projecting forward from both sides of the body, presenting energy from shoulders, hips and footwork driving all in the same direction at the same time. This does not mean both sides of the body have to be in contact with the opponent. It is more the recognition that there are always two sides of the body accelerating forward to the center of one's attack. Even though the mid-region is the key that maintains the whole structure while accelerating, it is the footwork that you concentrate on to maintain the whole system moving and accelerating along a line of progression. An easy experiment to experience double power lines is to run and jump through the air at a brick wall and watch both hands come out to protect you from impact. As an alternative, repeat the test with one hand and your balance and timing and commitment will suffer greatly. The double E gives your body natural energy and coordination to move with greater ease through the opponent's weaker layers of resistance. Because of the double E, you are far more able to accelerate your mass and not deviate from your center. When applying the double E, it is very hard to slow down, so it is natural to keep on accelerating through resistance and beyond. When faced with multiple attackers, a good understanding of both aspects of E theory will keep the body moving swiftly through an opponent's resistance. More importantly, there should be no attempt to reach the opponent with one hand, as this would mean you have slowed progression and are ready to fight. The double E stops the one system splitting, limiting the chance of mental distractions relating to dominating the attacker. The situation can go bad very quickly if you decide to strike, kick or grab the opponent, thus breaking the double E. To execute a technique means you have to stop progress to stand and fight resistance. The double E approach requires the whole body to keep moving, maximizing your activation, loading and energy levels. By maintaining acceleration as a priority always improves the momentum towards the attacker's defenses. Knowing progression through the group means the body keeps on accelerating through the weaker layers of the attacker's defenses along a line of least resistance to an exit. Breathing unifies the E. Breathing and life go together. Just choke a person and see how they react. Breathing is the key ingredient to maintaining the mid-region's effectiveness. It will give you the feedback that informs you that you are holding the E together. For anyone who has experienced a fight, breathing also indicates how fast you are using up your energy reserves. In competitive fighting, controlling the pace of the fight helps restore the deficits to manageable levels, or you will gas out. Breathing is life and life is everything. The act of breathing properly not only assists in releasing energy from bodily stores, but for normal martial applications it also joins the feet with the upper body to project more power into strikes. Breathing is the easiest way to get the body's core to coordinate with the rest of the body to produce more power when meeting resistance. Most martial artists are very familiar with special breathing skills when applying techniques. It somehow enhances the strike's effectiveness and speed and focus. In a less mobile body, breathing can magically boost power, but when you walk or run forward and intentionally breathe out to strike, things do not go so well. Breathing can help the core in some situations, but not without its issues and distractions. As with your footwork, breathing never stops, everything must keep moving, otherwise you will lose control of your acceleration. Continuity in the energy world must be maintained utilizing all the systems of the body, breathing included, because you have no intention to be distracted from your path to safety. The big issue facing fighters is resistance, which takes valued time to counter and lots of energy. Breathing soon becomes labored, making things unbearable if this situation extends out over time and becomes life-threatening. Not to forget the value of choking out your opponent, that forces an immediate tap-out for good reason. While gassing out is extremely debilitating and dangerous to one's survival chances, to say the least. For the sake of survival, energy and oxygen levels cannot be allowed to decline to levels that clouds the mind to submit your life to the attackers. Your ability to cope is really determined by your breathing strategy, meaning you are fighting for your freedom first through your breathing. Breathing is the best strategy to calm the mind, but it also helps reduce your attachment to resistance both internally and externally. When you have entered the energy world, you need to be able to breathe freely to maintain the one system in its accelerated state after fully activating. More importantly, the one system is maintained by sensing you are fully loaded with energy, meaning you can accelerate non-stop. This allows your mind to access real-time information from your unconscious, improving your ability to outrun the attacker's intent and lead the situation. It is your breathing that drives your body faster while maintaining the double E effectiveness to stop you splitting the one system. Thus, your energy reserves will stay high, helping you drive through the attacker's resistances and beyond. There is no time to waste on forcing dominance on any one attacker, if so, you would have disrupted effective breathing skills. The mass effect. The mass effect is all about energy reserves. It is an alternative to the value of muscle strength, improving torque and kinetic chain use seen in most fighting systems. The mass effect is far less exciting to martial thinking, as it only occurs when your body acts as one unit while accelerating. This requires a good understanding of E theory and its directional and force vectors that need to move in the same direction. The journey into the energy world is not a simple matter of taking technical strikes and adding a body shove forward to access the momentary mass effect to enhance striking power. The mass effect is really designed for the long game, meaning there is no end to its application, described by maintaining levels of speed throughout the whole encounter. There is no start, stop and reload scene during its applications, therefore nothing like a fighter's technical strategy. This is why I have indicated it is the fighter's conditioning for strength and technical excellence that interferes with the smooth flow through the attacker's resistance. The fighter has a need to gain a superior position per attacker by meeting resistance with resistance at the cost of stalling progress to an exit. As resistance rises, so does the corresponding disregard to accelerate the one system forward needed to access the mass effect. In a multiple attack, the time wasted fighting resistance means there is no natural way to regain and store energy for the next onslaught of attackers. In the fight world, continuous momentum has lost its value in relation to energy storage. It is valued for strikes, takedowns and body impacts like a tackle. In the natural world, exponents are conditioned to believe that techniques are the way to make the body a powerful weapon. This is very true in the short game, that is the fighting ring. But it is not possible to accelerate the mass more than a second, ceasing to be effective after its first impact. During multiple assaults, energy is needed in a much more continuous way to cater for the relentless pressure from the attackers. It takes one slip up in one's flow of defensive action, stalling progress to an exit, allowing the attackers to find a way to grab you and down you fast. In the natural fight world, it is all about controlling one opponent by countering their resistance. The energy world has been hiding an alternative way to counter multiple resistances by knowing how to use one's mass movement in a continuous manner to store energy, which caters well when facing many attackers. Chapter 5: Freedom in Real Time. During a multiple attack situation, it is advantageous to remain fully energized throughout the encounter, enabling you to move through expected resistances and maintain your freedom. What the novice usually does is work too hard to win by trying to control too many resistances at once. This means losing sight of the big picture, allowing the rest of the group to focus on your inattention to down you on your blind sides. The solution lies with your ability to free your focus and take the lead in the encounter by disengaging from all attackers. The aim in the energy world is to remain free from resistance, both internal and externally. By maintaining your progression through the resistance informs you are still fully energized and ready to accelerate onwards to outrun any attacker's intent. The catch for all interested parties who want to know about this strategy is getting to understand what a real-time reaction means. Firstly, you cannot imagine a real-time strategy like you would a technique. Secondly, to experience resistance means you have no way to access a real-time moment. Thirdly, thinking about the strategy will void any real-time strategy. As mentioned, real-time happens during a period of mental darkness where fast and unconscious reactions take over. Thus, the memory of a real-time incident like an accident can never be construed as a true mental account of the actual situation. So, how do we train these real-time skills to counter resistance delivered by many attackers? I begin by directing people to consider the speed of response found in any flight response, like jumping back from a striking snake. The action lacks planning but seems to be effective in keeping you safe. So, what is real time? You typically only enter real time during an emergency where your flight response is activated. It is when your primitive mind is allowed to take over your social drives, while shutting out conscious distractions, enabling you to respond unhindered to get away safely. The catch when experiencing a real moment is, no one honestly remembers exactly what they did during a desperate survival situation. When asked, people tell you they just acted instinctively and somehow got through the event. So, the normal input of information and processing of sensory information is suppressed into a conscious blankness, what we call a moment of darkness. My discussion of darkness is to make it something not to fear or that you are out of control, losing your chances to survive. It is a good indicator that you have experienced real time based on the flight reaction. This has nothing to do with berserker mode where people go blind with aggression. The general focus to martial defense solutions is to find a counter to every form of attack, trapping people into solving impossible problems with respected defensive tools. The collective response always needs the attention of peers by being better than anyone else at using current solutions and skills. By taking this approach to win the day, you have to realize your thoughts are out of sync with real-time experiences. For all that is created and taught relies on mental constructions of possible events, all based on people's imaginations of what could be a true situation. It is customary to fulfill the chosen scenarios by understanding the timings of your applications, requiring the opponent to be attached to your request to fight. Mental constructed strategies need resistance to exist, as this is the way we think in the natural world of defense. However, this must mean you are magically predicting the future with confabulations, based on your fight choreography commonly developed on the training floor. When you really have to survive chaos, you will disengage from social conformity and be left to your own means. This is when freedom and safety become your immediate drives, far from any technical-driven thoughts. Plans are lost in the confusion of the blank moment, and you are out of time to switch worlds. Begin your mental journey towards understanding freedom by imagining slipping over and trying to save your butt. Get it wrong, you will either break something or have a painful landing. I ask you, how much time do you have to create and plan the perfect fall? If it is a real fall, it is virtually none. If the situation is truly an unexpected fall, conscious past experiences will not be accessible to develop a safe landing. The more likely unconscious response will be your surprise, leaving you experiencing unexpected outcomes. Predictions cannot be construed when experiencing a real-time response, so planning specific technical strategies is a non-event. Let's get back to thinking about a multiple attack, where everything is more likely to be a surprise, unknowns coming in from everywhere. So, any expectancies will only slow progress as you look for solutions to imagined self-fulfilling moments. This is why a trained fighter needs to create a series of one-on-one fights to represent a multiple attack. It makes the fighter feel comfortable, and it is slow enough to look effective during those on-the-floor demonstrations. In the energy world, we want to train people to outrun those internal representations of fight moments and get into the habit of moving at speed, thus outrunning the attacker's intent. One thing that must be understood above anything else, in a group attack you do not have time to rely on past confabulations. If you want to maintain your freedom and survive the encounter, you have to realize how precious each moment of time is. Your aim should be to give any one attacker only a single moment of your time. Break this golden rule and the outcome will be painful. This is the first thing we teach people about surviving a group attack, and it is a hard lesson for many to learn as it goes against our social conditioning. It is your social conditioning that you must overcome to experience the energy world. The problem is that we all want the world to slow so we can see what is happening and we can plan with some certainty. We very much like to take control of our plans and strategies with our overt confidence. In the energy world, we flip thinking time to real-time action, where you have no time to plan from your imaginations your next move. If you take the time to capture the moment like a camera and then react, the attacker's weapons will find the gap in your attention and do damage. Only when you activate fully can you match or outpace the opponent's actions by taking the lead. If you take the time to assess the attacker's strategies, then you have internalized and got stuck in the battle's mental mud. You have connected with the attacker's gameplay. This is no better than sitting in the audience being fooled by a magician's trick. Real time at the source. The key to entering a real-time moment is acceleration. To do this, you need to be able to turn off your sensory awareness, meaning your mental assessments and judgments. If you can see, feel, hear, taste, or lose your balance, then your mind is open to be distracted by thoughts. The greatest enemy to entering the energy world is your own senses. Anything that requires a large amount of your concentration and self-assessment will delay a survival reaction, something we call mental mud. To understand this, you have to grasp that our perceptions of time are distorted and illusory. Real time is in the now, which is outside of our conscious thoughts. So, when you spend time hesitating, that means you are waiting for the senses to pick up useful information, while unaware the situation has already moved ahead in time. This waiting for the brain to process information plays well in the short game of fighting that relies on technical deception and focus strategies. In truth, mental processing always happens in past time, beset by internal chatter and imaginations. Real time equates with the happenings in the real world, all occurring outside our conscious thoughts. What we are perceiving are snapshots or pieces of filmed reality that is plastered on our inner realities, making up a plausible collage of current realities. The question is, which imagined reality will you choose to react to? Remember, the brain takes time to process information from the many imagined choices, so you better realize you are behind time in your responses. You are out of sync with reality, always having to work in past time. However, for most people, the reality of time is not easily grasped. It was not until Einstein's theory of relativity that became responsible for giving people a better understanding of time. For example, he deduced while looking at a clock that he was not seeing time on the clock face in the present, that is, there are tiny delays built into reality and our perceptions. Light had to travel from the clock to his eyes and then be mentally processed, which takes time. Bettering our real-time experiences can only be acquired close to the source of your attention. So how can you reduce the gaps in thinking, at the same time be instantaneously at the source of your interest? We have talked about taking the lead away from the attackers and at the same time accelerating the mass to the center of the attacker's intent. If you hesitate, your approach to real-time becomes impossible. I will start by saying all the information you need happens at the interface or around the force line with any opponent. If we are conscious of our actions, we have slowed progress to an exit, due to the blindness created by our internalized thoughts. When you accelerate yourself at the source of your own attack, you are aiming to outrun both yours and the attacker's intent. This activates the flight response and your quest to stay safe. To fully activate and energize a life-saving response, one needs to suppress mental defensive constructions driven by your ego, previously referred to as mental mud. An effective real-time response always gives you a sense of freedom from the attacker's resistance. It feels like walking, where nothing is left behind or split from the one system. If you have any intention to control any one attacker, you will have split the value of the one system, captured by the wasteful time spent checking your handiwork. Simply, the survival reaction is far more liberating than dealing with the sense of panic. So, real-time behavior allows you to experience freedom from resistance. If you have not accelerated and entered the danger zone in a fully activated state, then there is no chance of freeing yourself. You have to give all of yourself to the situation to shock yourself into those real-time responses. Your aim is to pass the danger zone in minimal time and move into the space where the opponent wants to activate his defenses. This does not mean you push your way to the source, it is about moving the whole system without restriction to where the opponent's defenses are supposed to be most effective. If you have been good at not hesitating, you have filled the gap with the attacker presenting yourself without internal and external resistances. You have achieved the goal of not having a mental and physical connection with the current attacker. This is why in the energy world it is wise to perceive each attacker as a safety zone to pass through while moving on to the next. This type of thinking avoids any time lost on defensive thoughts, so the world is just a series of safe zones, hence the line of least resistance that drives you towards an exit. If, at any time you are tempted to waste time connecting with attackers, your progression will stall, allowing the group to take you down. The resistance world as an illusion. If Einstein was right, what we see now cannot be happening now. Due to light speed and weaknesses in perception, our conscious representations of real-time events have to be delayed. Also, even more time is lost when solving complex problems, not to forget the extra time for planning, aiming to achieve the best outcomes. Whenever you are using your 8 senses like looking, feeling and hearing, you are consuming time, letting the real world pass by faster than your thoughts. This is probably why we spend so much time focusing on the external world, making sure it has not changed too much, so one's current decisions are corrected for the next move. This is why we want to control and lead events and set rules for life's games, place the white lines down on the playing field, making sure our predicted actions fall close to real time. Our desire to dominate the situation requires intense focus before, during and after each thought-out event, checking every stage for weaknesses and looking for improvements for future rollouts. All these stages have more to do with your internal world than what is happening now or during unexpected events. It could be said, we are living in a sea of past thoughts that tends to create many imagined futures. It's from our experiences of pain and injuries that we become aware of lost time, while stressing over trying to get a perfect solution next time. In other words, knowing you can lose control means more effort is needed to stack the gameplay in your favor. This is why it is so important to have well-defined scenarios in mind, so that they can be trained repeatedly for perfection, making sure negative outcomes will not catch you out. So, when someone asks you for a fight, it must be for a good reason. I would think somebody has confidence in winning the proposed game. This is why in martial arts there are so many technical solutions designed for some expected gameplay. Essentially, we are conditioned to spend valued time assimilating information, hoping to find the right technical response for the up-and-coming attack. Many students of the arts are good at speeding up these processes to effectively resist expected and immediate onslaught. However, these high-speed processing skills are only effective while the person is at the peak of his training and development in a known context such as a ring. But when faced with uncertainty of a multiple attack, serious cracks appear in conditioned skill sets, stressing the brain so much that it wants to give up. The alternative is to throw caution to the wind and go berserk, just like a less trained exponent. By understanding real-time, you are one step closer to perceiving where the real world sits in your mind. So, when you are faced with a time-critical survival situation, your initial visualizations have little bearing to what you should be doing in that moment. Hesitation may feel strategic in the first moments of an attack, appearing to help you think of one good defensive strategy if lucky. In the real world, the situation has moved on faster than you can think and find those solutions to act on. In truth, you have no time to stop and panic, knowing you could be downed at any moment. By this time, you should be aware you have no time to look for answers. To survive a group attack, you need to counter all forms of hesitation, as these internalizations stop you moving forward at speed, which will allow you to see the up-and-coming threats in real time. We want to stress the brain with mass motion, aiming to stop imaginings of problems created by the attacking group. It starts by taking the lead again of our own actions, by disengaging with the attacking group's proposal. We start by accelerating our mass towards the center of the attacker's intent, trying to be first and lead by being the problematic target. Like when slipping over and falling, we accidentally pressure the brain into real-time reactions. The brain only approaches real-time thinking when the body is moving fast, like falling or running through a forest away from hungry prey. Flight has no intention of slowing, compared to the other reaction, standing and fighting. In the real world, all the good information you need to survive happens at speed when you stay free from the controls of resistance. Just stop there and reload and imagine the best next solutions. This will not rectify the lag in time as the attackers are bearing down on top of you. If your body is not moving at speed, the mind will imagine any number of solutions for you to choose from. This sounds good in martial arts, even with their reflexive tricks, but you are out of time to counter the rest of the attackers. The answer to our reluctance to embrace flow to help our survival response comes from our social conditioning to stop and hesitate and try to control the situation. This works fine if the situation is like a chess game where there is time to plan your next move, but if the situation is an immediate life threat, then the mind will be quickly overloaded. Like it or not, real-time responses will suppress one's conscious thoughts to economize mental processes for speed to keep the body alive. Snapshots. Snapshots are those recorded sensory moments that flash across your mind's eye about an event that you value. It is somewhat akin to seeing a very short video clip flash across your memory. It could be the moment just before you got punched in the face. More importantly, it can trigger a detailed momentary experimental set of responses involving all your senses and emotions. Snapshots are the obscured memories that martial artists base all their future defensive predictions on. As already discussed, one's memories are illusory, but the experimental effect is too strong and self-serving. It holds our rationale to ransom repeatedly, even when facing an imminent attack. It is so addictive that martial teachers are unaware of the mental trap, having based all their training programs on a lifetime of faulty memorized moments. Snapshots can also drive the agendas of social interactions, allowing these select mental constructs drive the topic of concern. In the arts you hear statements like, "Today we are going to train, how to get out of this grab or avoid this takedown, or do you want to fight," and so on. I am sure this sounds familiar to many in the fight game. In the energy world, snapshots are much harder to recall, due to periods of mental darkness created by the flight response. But there is a time and place to use snapshots during a group encounter, that is after experiencing mental darkness, being the moment you catch a glimpse of the next safe zone. Earlier we introduced the idea of each attacker being a safe zone that you need to successfully pass through without being caught on resistance on your way to an exit. In the energy world you have no expectations to deal with, because you have no memories of salient moments to react to from previous encounters with attackers. As a reminder, the aim is to pass through the weaker layers of an attacker's resistance in real time, which is the moment you experience mental darkness. As we escape the dark moment after passing through resistance, a light moment returns, and this is when a snapshot is taken, helping you orientate to the next attacker and find the path of least resistance. The brain is now able to identify the next safe zone, while maintaining your smooth progression to another attacker. Your experience of a multiple attack situation becomes a series of light moments, motivating you to close the gap as soon as possible with the next attacker for safety. In a group encounter, the goal is to remain free from mental and physical resistance. So, when in darkness or flight mode, you are free from mental and physical resistance, and when you see light, you are taking snapshots and accelerating freely to the next safe space. Freedom is easily achieved when you are not caught up on distractions like experiencing darkness, that fully activates you and maintains full energization. It is only when you are accelerating that your vision of the surrounding sparks hesitation and uncertainty, thus slowing progress. To counter any chance of hesitation, we use acceleration to drive you towards the center of the next attacker's intent. This means entering the flak zone at high speed, aiming to activate the flight response for safety first, not fight. Darkness is created in the moments of flight, where unconscious reactions take over to fully activate the body. The drive is always towards the light after a dark moment, wanting to see the next safe zone as soon as possible. If done well, speed is maintained and resistance is avoided, and the attacker is paneled. This is made possible knowing the mind has no time to think about matching previous snapshots to trigger those trusty conditioned responses usually based on fighting. With this understanding, resistance is somehow sorted during periods of darkness when your body is fully activated. So, the socially learnt checking response of your memories is avoided, and hesitation is almost extinct for your safety. Now, if you decided to stop accelerating through your opponent, you will be overwhelmed with all those sensory inputs, distractions and resistances, collectively making you consider a reactive proposition that you cannot refuse. You have connected with one attacker, who has triggered a response based on an internal data bank of snapshots. The trap is set long before the situation unfolds. We have set the agenda for the battle based on the outcomes conditioned from those trusty internal snapshots collected and modified over time. This is why fighters get caught on one attacker at a time when facing many attackers, unable to disengage and move on to another attacker. To watch a battle unfold may seem smart, but the idea is flawed because the situation has changed before you have completed any internal processing. Real time means you have no time to consolidate information. The effect of accelerating to the center of the attack helps you disengage the grabs set in memory, thus avoiding hesitation. Socially, we are conditioned to predict and expect results, wanting more snapshots to work with, to build a better internal picture of the event to improve planning. Instinctively, we want predictive accuracy based on better sensory inputs, helping conscious clarity towards what to do next. Interestingly, the faster you move, the fewer the number of snapshots you can obtain, resulting in an increase in fear and uncertainty. This is why the mind will consume valued time, hesitating to come up with a better answer while slowing actions, aiming to reset the situation. This does not fit the flow in the energy world, which has no brakes to reset the sensory and bodily systems. This is why hesitation must be reduced by seeing each attacker as a safe zone, where sensory darkness is the key, aiming to avoid distractions and the fear of uncertainty. What helps with flow is the expected avoidance of resistance. Therefore, instead of focusing on punches, kicks, grabs and weapons, your interest is in finding where the next safe zone will be. Snapshots are just an analogy to describe what might be happening in the mind when you return to the light, helping you select the best path ahead to find safety. The survival mind uses darkness to take advantage of faster subconscious mental processes that is far more efficient at extracting past patterns relating to current sensory inputs. The flight response is our drive that never stops accelerating bodily systems if safety is not obtained. Therefore, continuity occurs because you maintain acceleration in accordance to how you interpret safety. If you were to stand still, then everything else moves out of phase of your reality, threatening your sense of safety, but when you move and accelerate, the world moves around you, giving you a sense of freedom to avoid the threat of resistance. What occurs during your accelerated state is that your brain needs to see a path ahead which incorporates the next safe zone. As mentioned previously, the attackers are seen as safe zones because you are moving at such a pace that the incoming threats are outpaced. This runs counter when seeing two people waiting and wanting to have a fight. During acceleration, it is far easier to identify attackers as stepping stones than making use of the gaps between each of them. When accelerating, the world appears to be moving around you, like what a downhill skier experiences, trying to pick paths to avoid losing speed. This means the skier uses the terrain to control acceleration and direction without a huge amount of judgment. On the battlefield, the terrain is made up of attackers and objects, all able to help with acceleration and direction while maintaining freedom from resistance. By choosing fighting as a solution, your speed must be forfeited in preparation to fend off resistance from the attackers. The energy world has no desire to control or connect with others, aiming to be invisible to the attacker's sense of social domination by maintaining your freedom and speed. If you have the urge to fight first, this will force you into anticipation and expectation relating to the battle ahead based on memoized snapshots. Sensory freedom is not about emptying the mind, it is about your ability to make use of real-time information by allowing the unconscious to be first to act, cutting off those time-consuming thoughts that make up your conscious reactions. So, the Flak Zone is where everything should happen, where the opponent's defenses are the best. This is where you move into mental darkness, allowing your whole body to react as one system in real time. Immediately after mental darkness, your conscious sensations are brought back into awareness, back to the light again, already entering the next Flak Zone on offer. The mind is most efficient when the imagined world is suppressed by voiding conscious controls, which switches off hesitation, leaving no gaps in time between you and the next attacker. Past time. Past time is everything we know and remember. Therefore, if we think, it is past time. It has everything to do with our conscious thoughts and our current view of reality. Our choices are made in past time, all those punches, kicks and takedowns you are planning to use to win the day. If you can see the event taking place in your mind's eye, it has already happened. The catch for martial artists is they have designated it as a real-time experience, and yet valued time has been taken to judge these memories. Even worse, our conscious judgments are our own biased and distorted reconstructions from our highly filtered view of the world. Our thoughts appear to our mind's eye as the best constructs of a world we think exists. Magicians love to take advantage of our ignorance as well as our poorly constructed real-world views, which allows the illusions to fill the gaps and appear real. To help with our confidence relating to reality, we like to avoid the dilemma by seeing the magic trick done many times, hoping to find answers and make the world more predictable. We only feel confident of our reality if we can see in our mind's eye a plausible explanation of the event. It goes without saying, we want to test our viewpoints of reality from salient snapshots and set up a controlled experiment with usable rules, hoping to confirm the expected outcomes. It is from our memories that we think up all those technical scenarios, each one needing to be checked repeatedly for reliability, seen in those on-the-floor exercises. Once the parameters and rules have been checked, now the game can be played, requiring a trigger. This is where the mind gives the impression you are in control, taking over responses for the sake of a biased solution. This is like mud that slows you right down and holds you to expected outcomes. Hence, this is why we tend to anticipate and expect and hesitate at inopportune times. It is your chosen technical experiments that traps you into thinking that you can predict the future and control real-time unfoldings. It is like being punched in the nose, now feeling guilty of your inadequate preparations. We spend most of our lives trying to salvage our minds from our own delusions and self-destruction. In the resistance world, thinking is needed, as it gives meaning to life and its pursuits. Your assessment of the situation helps you anticipate its severity, which determines your level of activation and commitment. But it is the uncertainty out there that is putting a spanner in your preparations. So, as a compensation for the fear of failure, people in the natural world dream up what-if scenarios, hoping for the best answers to pop up. We are conditioned to our own expected failings by considering impossible problems of our own making. When asked if any of these problems have occurred, the answer is usually no. Fearful thoughts are always pricey, needing you to spend up big, while aiming to protect oneself from the unexpected life threats. If we think we can win, then the fear seems to be averted. Even the idea of a problem is essentially something you have dreamt up to make your life miserable. But when it comes to an immediate danger, we tend to suppress the reactive response in favor of expected failures derived from our fears. Our socially learnt responses are supposed to solve life's problems, given that the expected gameplay is recognized in time. We continually hear, just commit yourself to training hard and all will be fine, you have the answers. Somehow, this ignores the less conscious survival response when a snake suddenly pops out to bite you. Let's take an example of when pastime takes control of one's action, like spotting a kick coming. Both you and your opponent have taken the time to act in unison. This is why the resistance world excels in developing techniques and strategies to specific scenarios, because in their mind's eye they see and measure the event before reacting defensively. In contrast, in the energy world you effectively ignore the opponent's need for connection, while outrunning the attacker's intent to do harm. By taking the lead, you have no intention to spend time focusing on the attacker's aggression. Connection creates thinking, meaning you have stopped progress before you have started to activate. So, thinking always signals to the enemy you are spending too much time hesitating. This is best thought of as the unwanted reciprocal problem, that is, if you measure an opponent for an attack, the opponent is also measuring up your demise. Chapter 6: The Flak Zone. The flak zone is the area where the opponent's techniques can do damage. It is the zone where blows are exchanged and grabs initiated. In other words, you are in range of the attacker's weapons. Therefore, it is of no surprise to see people approach this zone with caution. You could say the world of martial arts is obsessed with this zone and its problems. Whatever you decide to do with the flak zone, you will either rush through it, move in and out, or around it as if testing and measuring your opponent's resolve. For as long as there have been disagreements, the flak zone is the space where the battles take place. The flak zone is extremely social and attractive, beset with unwritten rules, and tends to focus on lookers. Therefore, the flak zone has the potential to secure one's position in the social hierarchy. Competitive fighting is about dominating the flak zone. But when it comes to self-defense against a multiple attack, the flak zone is not as well defined due to time pressures. But for an exponent, preparing and participating in a social fight, time is not your enemy. Socially conditioned fighters have the luxury of spending enormous amounts of time preparing strategies and then pacing them during the battle. This means the wise fighter will be well prepared for expected flak long before the fight takes place, aiming to be first at controlling the flak. This is why the quick and easy solutions to win over an opponent's flak is the fighter's call to arms. It was for educational purposes the flak zone was conceived to help students understand time is the main driver in the energy world. It allowed the student to envision the value of time as a defense tool which helps avoid the opponent's resistance. The student can now focus more on their speed of progression, knowing it will shrink the time spent in the flak zone to almost zero, thus reducing fight time per attacker. Thus, saving energy and increasing the chances against many attackers. The complete educational tool is called the three-zone model, relating to a single encounter, where you start from a safe distance, move into the danger zone and then find safety when you are close up and personal. The three zones better referred to as first safe zone, danger zone and finally second safety zone. As a tool, it was meant to highlight the level of focus placed in each zone. The discussion that follows aims to build a clearer understanding of the three zones that make this teaching tool useful for all. It is hoped by the end of the discussion you will understand why the flak zone should not grab our attention. The three zones of battle. There are three zones to consider when moving towards an opponent's defenses. The first safety zone is the zone where you are not in range of an attack. The second zone is where you are in striking distance, or the flak zone, followed by the third safety zone where you are up close to your opponent's body. All three zones tend to create different problems and needs to be understood in context. As mentioned, time is of an essence during a multiple attack, so you will be urged to understand why accelerating through all three zones without hesitation helps avoid resistance, plus maintains continuity of speed towards an exit. The first safety zone. The first safety zone is far enough away from your opponent that he is unable to physically touch you, but it is the zone where you are at risk of being mentally distracted and held back by your thoughts. This is the time where internal chatter or self-talk can grab most of your attention. This self-talk can be identified by hesitant behavior or posturing before a plan is triggered. These thoughts act like mental mud, slowing your actions because they are comprised of ill-defined delusions of grandeur that take part in motivating you to stick around to fight. Essentially, the person who hesitates in the first safety zone is trapped by their social commitments rather than acting on a survival response. Hesitation originates from training, relating to the time spent on the many mental luxuries that besets traditional dogma. Even though you might feel safe in the first safety zone, in a group attack your hesitation can be extremely costly. If you hesitate, you will find it very difficult to fully activate, allowing the group to measure your slowed progress and attack you all at once. The consequence of hesitation is you will never rise beyond a 50% activation level. It is only when you fully activate without hesitation that you can begin to seriously reduce the risk of being trapped in the first safety zone. Real safety is best achieved when you can move beyond the mental mud brought on by your training and social conditioning. So, the way to circumvent your own mental mud is you can use a simple trick called the busy mind, which will keep you mentally distracted from the attacker's intent to do harm. If you are busy servicing yourself first, the attacker's mental and physical grabs are less likely to be successful. Now you are in a far better position to fully activate the flight response. Aggression acts like a question, always needing your full attention to come up with the best answer. It is best not to accept the attacker's propositions in the first place by being busy, like going to the toilet, as your priority before even considering the attacker's aggressive moves. Situational awareness should happen long before an event takes place, which allows you to be first by leading with your questionable behavior. To be successful, you have to see your freedom arise above your conditioned socially organized mud that tends to trap people to fight resistance with resistance. The Flak Zone. In the resistance world, the flak or danger zone is where martial weapons do the most harm. It's the zone where physical resistance thrives, referred to as the combat zone where heroes gain notoriety. For martial artists, the Flak Zone could be considered their personal hunting grounds to dominate expected play. If you have decided to fight an opponent, then it is likely you will spend considerable time in the Flak Zone. I am sure you have repeatedly trained effective skills for this zone, tested both in the training hall and under pressure. The Flak Zone is the martial artist's flytrap, hardwired into all fighting systems. The aim is to make short work of another person's defensive flak and gain some form of capitulation. Submission and combat games are everywhere, weeding out the weak, those exponents that cannot cope with aggression in the Flak Zone. In the energy world, the Flak Zone is considered an attractive option to find peace where resistance is worst. By entering the Flak Zone early and first, allows you to get to the source of the attacker's intent to do harm. This means you are suppressing and changing the attacker's intention to make you the target. Being first cannot occur if you are distracted by the attacker's preamble, now forcing you to hesitate, waiting in anticipation of what is to come. The irony is the opponent needs your mental and physical connection to complete his trap. By understanding time, your safety is achieved by outrunning your own conditioned intentions to control the situation. It is always important to have situational awareness working for you, helping you to act decisively and early and not be trapped on the tricks of aggression and those conditioned socially organized statements. Your newfound insights can close the door to the requested connection and open another door on your own terms. At no time do you want the attackers to take hold of your mind and body by wasting your time hesitating and posturing. You want to avoid activating at the same time as the attackers, so it is important to appear uncontrollable and free from the rules of the game. This means you have no need to fight and be trapped by the Flak Zone. Your first task is to suppress the desire to control the attackers, therefore reducing the importance and time spent in the Flak Zone. Second safety zone. The second safety zone is where you get really close to the attacker, but it is only a momentary intrusion into the attacker's personal space, where you use your body energy first, not your hands. Even though you are in body-to-body contact, you are not attracted to control the attacker's actions. Your safety and survival rely on maintaining a non-attachment attitude, knowing that you are not there to be anybody's patsy. So, the time spent in this zone has to be negligible, only achievable by moving the one system at speed past the attacker to another attacker. It is by default a momentary safe zone, like a stepping stone helping you to accelerate to another attacker. This is done by not having any urge to dominate the attacker. Any slowing of progression means you have attached yourself to the attacker's resistance because of a momentary urge to upstage the attacker. In the energy world, there must be no time wasted trying to prove a point in a multiple attack, especially when you are in body-to-body contact with any one attacker. Understandably, touching another person has to create connection and a stimulus to activate a technical solution conditioned by your martial training. But, as a miscalculation of a technical solution, you are wasting precious time to get free from the group's clutches. Free the mind. When confronted with a self-defense situation, we are consumed by anticipation, expectation, and hesitation. These three mental responses are conditioned and learned over a lifetime, making up the unwanted hesitant and fear response, or simply mental mud. It just fits our social way of thinking, always fearing that we are about to lose out to other people. As always, no one fights unless they think they can win, or they are brain dead to their own ability, referred to as ignorance is bliss. The issue is, martial artists believe they are never good enough to be the best, which causes unwanted inner turmoil when facing an unexpected and ill-defined defensive threat. The feeling of inadequacy takes focus away from the actual event. This is not a grave concern when facing an organized social fight which can be paced to one's own rhythm. But when facing many attackers, one's inner focus escalates rapidly. It is no wonder why a targeted person will self-question and hesitate, having wasted defensive time focusing on fear by thinking of the worst possible outcome. It is now a combination of shock and fear that interferes with one's unrealized expectations. As artists, we would like to bathe in the same glory presented to us by slick promoters, somehow suggesting you can be winners too. It is a trap we all fall for in the arts, desperately wanting to control our own destiny and find our own glory. But when faced with an actual situation, now the exponent finds out the games played do not fit well with the expected defensive response, finding the actual event still elicits too much fear. You would think, once experienced, the glory illusion should evaporate, thus putting an end to training those delusions of grandeur. But it is only when you realize it is your anticipatory fears that need redressing, aiming to sharpen the survival trigger, saving you time and energy. Fear is only examined after a violent attack. Now the victim spends time sieving through the snapshots of an actual experience, recognizing large gaps in memory and technical recall. But the experience of fear overrides the sensory recalls from beginning to end of an event. It could be said, you can only be free in mind when you have no anticipation, expectation, and hesitation about a past or future event. This is better referred to as being in the zone or in flow, where the mind is super focused and is not easily distracted by the mental recall of past fearful events. It is truly the most efficient way to use your brain when stressed by a life threat, which minimizes those crippling memories, while supercharging unconscious responses found in a flight response. A real-time focus only happens if you take control of your own actions first, before the attackers propose their intentions to do you harm. Oddly enough, when you lead and act freely, you cannot remember in detail how you made your decisions. Plus, it is difficult to express to others how you can act fully without having a detailed plan and recall of the event. Not to forget, real-time responses happen in mental darkness. The first lesson to free the mind is to avoid the urge to control the world around you. This means you have no intention to dominate another person or solve other people's problems. You are not there to carry the monkey for the attackers. So, if you feel you are still at the starting line with every intention to be free, well, the truth is you are trapped in the resistance world trying to answer questions. The initial way to shed your delusions of grandeur is to regain your sense of flow, always directing yourself along the line of least resistance. The aim is to avoid those unwanted social connections like a fight, while maintaining the free-flowing survival response to an exit. This means not wasting any time grasping another person's attention. Shielding. The use of shielding has been described when a defense artist hides behind an attacker's body like a shield for a moment of safety when exposed to a multiple attack. The shield defense is a byproduct of a thought experiment dreamt up in slow motion as an effective way of protecting your body while at the same time fighting off many attackers. The aim is honorable in that by holding a cooperative opponent in front of you tends to reduce the area of your body exposed to attack by this hiding strategy. The cooperative shield acts as a safe space to lure the next attacker in, so you can lunge around the shield to inflict maximum damage to the incoming. I would place this under my small target approach by limits placed on the attacker's choices. In truth, shielding has to be illusory, because it assumes you can control the attacker long enough as a shield. Also, it is questionable that you are free enough to produce effective defensive strikes. I think the idea that it helps to pick off each approaching attacker in succession is a little ambitious to say the least. It all sounds too good to be true. The takeaway here is, the value of a small target approach is safety, which is true for the shielding effect. But there is no acceleration, which limits the amount of energy being generated to use to deal with many attackers. The body shield is simply a product of one's thought experiments and not having been exposed to real multiple attack pressures. I have mentioned before that in the energy world time must be your asset, not to be wasted on technical anticipation, expectation, and hesitation, which happens if you apply a body shield during a multiple attack. In a real event, everything is done at speed, and so should those valued thought experiments. Just by changing the speed of how you internalize an actual event can save your life. Now that you are speeding up your mental gameplays, a whole new world opens, which makes you feel you have missed something very important. Martial artists today are much more aware of pressure testing their technical creations to get a reading relating to their mental realities. The increasing use of pressure testing has highlighted two important ingredients: time urgency and actual defensive resistance, usually missed on those on the floor demonstrations. In a multiple attack, problem solving has to be done at speed due to time pressures, which changes everything you once thought was effective and real. What comes to mind during pressure training is that you are wasting too much time anticipating, expecting and hesitating. Also, those well-thought-out technical strategies are smothered very quickly, followed by a quick grounding. But when combining the mass effect and speed of progression, the attackers tend to mentally and physically stiffen, expecting impact. I have referred to this as the paneling effect, the moment where the attacker instinctively prepares to resist by bracing their body for impact. This leaves the attacker standing there waiting. Surprisingly, the effect acts as a temporary shield for you from other attackers. So, the hard part to get your head around is that you are moving at speed, while the attackers are standing there relatively still, waiting to grab or hit you. It is not a physical shield as such, but more effective as a real-time strategy by using far less time and effort. This is why you want to appear to be attacking the center of the opponent's defenses to create the paneling response. The mental view of this strategy is to outrun the attacker's intent, aiming to limit the attacker's choices to counter in time. It is like throwing questions at people; they are instinctively bound to answer the query. It is a simple way of getting ahead of the game and into the attacker's head, without having any intention to lock onto resistance. The value of the mental shield is only possible if you maintain the principles of E theory, where the body moves as one system. All that the attacker sees is your head moving into the flak zone and appears to be easy pickings. This is why it is a small target approach. Another valued aspect of the one system is, at no time do you split your attention by deflecting resistance away or trying to hit and control the opponent. This could be considered an example of a non-stop strategy that maintains the ideals of the infinite game. It is the one system and the mass effect that delivers the unexpected mental impact on the opponent's mind, which gives you the shield and gap to keep moving at speed. Remember that the greater the acceleration to the source, the greater the chance of getting into real time, which forces the opponent also into those mental uncertainties of real time. Fighters tend to stiffen while experiencing real-time mental darkness due to their low activation levels. It is your ballistic nature of the mass effect that moves you rapidly through the weaker layers of resistance, that shatters most defensive counter-responses. It could be said that accelerating the one system acts as a mental weapon that shields you from the attacker's intent to do harm. If you try to use your arms to stop the opponent's resistance on the way through the flak zone, you will have to forfeit body momentum to create a controllable counterforce. This will immediately be picked up by the defending attacker, thus voiding the instinctive paneling reaction and shield effect. Any time spent connecting with an attacker leaves you exposed to the rest of the attackers. As a reminder, fighting resistance with resistance will stall your progress through a group of attackers. It is a matter of having the correct mindset that is directed to maintaining your speed, which is what forces the attackers to panel and the much-wanted shield effect. Never split your mind or body. An important caveat in the energy world is that you never split your bodily actions from the one system. A split happens when you lose sight of your destination, focusing on something else rather than your natural flow. In other words, your mind has switched from being in the zone to a distraction, thus losing mental continuity. This occurs when you have connected with a salient object and gave it importance. A split from the one system usually occurs when you desire to interact with an object or change something in the world around you. Let's begin this journey by understanding what it means to not split the one system. The best examples where the body does not split are walking and running. They both encapsulate the involvement of whole body coordination as well as the experience of flow, immediately giving you the sense of freedom from a targeted focus, like grabbing a cup. Also, walking and running allows you to find harmony within your chosen environment. The most important aspect is you are moving continuously, unhindered by the objects around you, while carving a path to your destination. You have limited your needs to fight off resistance or stop and interact with the world around you to prove a point. The body maintains its rhythmic motions with ease, while the mind effortlessly cuts a groove through the world's distractions. If you are not distracted, you will feel at ease and enjoy the current journey and love the magic of your whole body coordination. I like to think of it as moving meditation at its best. But, if you have the urge to look sideways and connect with an object or reach to touch something, the rhythm and coordination is easily disrupted. This effectively splits your focus between more than one task. So, splitting is a mental directive that moves any part of the body away from the line of progression. Another way of saying this, you have focused on a target with the intention to fulfill a query. The worst bodily splits will grab your attention fully, like strikes, grabs or touches, requiring you to lose your sense of progression to an exit. In the resistance world, this does not seem so important until you need to speed up your actions against many attackers. Any connection with the attackers is a split in your intentions, breaking the value of the one system. As mentioned, you do not want your speed of progression to slow. This will reduce your energy reserves, allowing more time to split the one system, while signaling to the attackers to take you out. Even when faced with the most fearsome set of distractions, you must stay centered on your path, stay in flow and stay in control of your own actions. Splitting can be very subtle, like an accidental parry. If it slows your speed and progression, it is a split. It is even worse when you stop and fight, especially against multiple attackers. The act of accelerating or lunging for a moment is also a huge split of the one system. It is a matter of maintaining progression and speed as your focus, just like walking and running, where your body and mind come together to get you to your destination. So, the use of any technique will be a split of the one system. This is like having to stop and stand still with a bow and arrow in hand aiming at a target. When standing there with weapons loaded, the attackers will have time to affect you and judge your defenses. The sense of being stuck in one place is what it would feel like when you are split and attached to your opponent mentally. Even the preamble before an attack splits the one system. In the resistance world, pundits are happy with the short game and love stopping to load up for the big comeback. The stop and explode approach is not very useful against a multiple attack. Another way to understand splitting is by considering the value of multitasking, like driving while eating or walking while trying to text. Whatever the way you split one's attention, safety declines rapidly. When asked if this is good behavior, they agree it is not a safe way to respond, and then without hesitation find excuses to say it's not so dangerous. In psychology, this behavior is called cognitive dissonance. So, when you are split, your attention is dispersed and the body's performance is in decline till something loses out. This is like trying to see both the black and white of the yin and yang at the same time, which is impossible. In truth, you can only see either the black side or the white side at any one time. What is happening? Your brain is multitasking, creating the illusion of seeing both colors. It takes 0.3 of a second to switch attention to the opposing color, the time it takes to split one's attention. If you are on the alert to when you split, you must be slowing your actions down, or taking time to hesitate. Remember, it takes time to switch focuses, and a group attack is made up of a lot of focuses ready to split your mind and body in many ways. It is a complex situation where time is of an essence to get things right. Weighing up your choices means you are split, standing there trying to load up for your big effort to find safety. If you are hesitating, you are too focused on trying to win the situation over. It is important to understand you must lead yourself to get into your own groove of things to do to find safety. It should be as fulfilling as walking and running. If you are not busy looking after yourself, then the attackers will split your intentions and attentions. Now, are you ready to take on the splitting challenge? It should be a big red light on your mental dashboard if you are feeling any hesitation towards this request. This means you are hesitating and split, preparing for the expected dangers ahead of you before deciding to act. Let's add a little more excitement to the issue of splitting. Consider how a sharp weapon can command one's attention. It will activate one's fear response, takes one's focus and floods the mind with too many choices. A dangerous weapon's appeal for an attacker is that it can split the target's one system with ease. This is linked to our years of conditioning that force us into the hesitation response, splitting one's actions between what to focus on and choices. Attackers instinctively know the shiny weapon will absorb your attention and split your resolve to find immediate defensive solutions. Now there is panic in one's inner voice asking, will they use their knives or not? In the energy world, the knife is not the problem, it's your attention to the knife. You are not doing your own thing, you have lost the lead, instead you have taken on the proposition of the attacker's threat to stab or cut you. You have been grabbed by the social questions being posed by the attacker's knives. You have been commanded to deal with the threat or lose your life. Without too much explanation, the attackers want you to connect with the knives to activate the fear response relating to the impossible problem. The answer you are looking for really resides in your ability to throw a question back at the attackers by not splitting the one system. The knife only has power when you connect with it, which means you have poor environment awareness that interfered with you acting early to find safety. To be caught on the focus on weapons is very serious stuff, and no word magic will do it justice here. The small target approach. The idea of the small target approach is to take away the attacker's choices. You do not want to stand tall, offering the attacker the full spectrum of targets. Limiting choice is the goal. It can be as simple as presenting a shiny knife to the victim, which dictates the focus and limits the choices. Always ask yourself, who is posing the better questions to gain attention and control of the situation. This is why we use acceleration to the center of the attack to flip the questions back to the attackers. By taking the lead, your questions become the more salient, therefore reducing the attacker's choices, both for defense and attack. This is why we move at speed towards the center of the attack, aiming to reduce the time for a calculated response. Stressing time is a small target approach that uses speed of progression to gain defense advantage. As discussed, when the attackers wave their shiny knives around, it immediately draws the target's attention, making it a good contender to be a small target approach. The knives act as a natural focusing unit, reducing the area of interest and leaves the target with limits on choices and a huge problem to solve. But in the energy world, the aim is not to be the victim of the knives, but to create a bigger problem for the attackers. This is done by limiting the time focused on knives by constraining the attacker's choices. The strategy is designed to force the attackers to reassess their intent to do harm. They see their position as having the advantage of numbers, superior weapons, and the added sense of dominance. The question is, how do you get the attackers to reconsider their choices in real time, which is not their comfort zone? In the energy world, everything relies on the speed of the mass effect. You start by presenting your full body mass at speed to the center of the attack, meaning you are aiming to outrun the attacker's intent. This approach is designed to affect the attacker's comfort zone, making your actions the more salient proposition. As expected, anything entering the flak zone gets immediate attention, knowing the knife will activate in a delayed fashion, triggered by a hesitant defensive response. If the attack was not a violent ambush, the attackers by social command will be standing still waiting for the trigger to do their worst, making them already behind the 8-ball due to lost time and hesitation. It is your rapid approach that effectually stresses time, making you the small target and the disruptor of the attacker's plans. The aim is always to outrun the attacker's intent, not their speedy strikes and slashes. The attackers become too needy, thus taking too much time to reload, wanting the big comeback to squash your tricks. Simply, you have forced your opponents to respond in a way they would for a single opponent when they are caught off guard, now looking for extra time to counter. To help you understand the small target effect, try imagining a fast-moving car that is about to run you over. If you are imaging the event close to actual speeds, you will have sensed your focus narrowing very quickly and holds you to ransom by your rapid assessment of anticipation, expectation, and hesitation before your life-saving response is activated. This also occurs in the fight world, because we are conditioned to narrow our responses for defense from the learnt fears relating to being hit hard or being taken to the ground and face the anguish of submission. This has effectively changed how we think of martial arts, where whole systems are designed around these specific focuses and fears. It is what all martial artists train for, wanting assurances of advantage and superior ability that will counter a specific offense. It is seldom based on meeting an unexpected attack head-on, it is just too risky. This is why the mass effect is so effective as being a defensive strategy and a small target approach, as it regains precious survival time away from conditioned assurances built on the training floor. The big difference in the energy world is there is no time spent on striking or controlling the opponent's actions. The aim is to suppress those learnt defensive responses by having no expectations or fears of what could be. Achievable by the mass approach, which aims to suppress reactive defensive habits conditioned into most people from the dangers of the fight world. So, the small target approach is to reduce the number of defensive choices for both the attackers and the target by limiting the time to make the right decision. In a multiple attack, time is of an essence, so any intentional connection with an attacker will be too long, meaning you will be seen and taken out. Standing or waiting always suggests you are hesitating, thinking of how to take back the lead. You are easy pickings for the attackers. A small target approach means you have to be in control of your own actions and not reactive to the attacker's propositions. Be careful not to dismiss some natural responses like looking stupid. It is a great strategy incorporating self-direction, and it is a small target approach which keeps you busy and defocused from the attacker's intentions. You have sensed advantage by making the attackers believe in their superiority, while letting them miss the obvious. You have taken the lead of the situation for a moment. Another good mental trick is to see the attackers as being invincible, making you an even smaller target in a world that is attracted to dominance. This is the natural world that is obsessed with winning and doing harm, a super focus that can be exploited. It does not take much to disrupt and outrun a narrowed focus based on social conditioning. The attackers have become the flashy shiny knives. They are nothing like a snake strike that comes out of the blue. The attacker's intent is to spend time looking and then check if those sharp weapons can grab your attention and make their job easier. All based on social instincts, which can be an asset in organized situations, but it also can be a curse to the ignorant. Just because the target looks honest and small does not mean it is all over before it starts. Anyone who has worked in security with a sense of reality knows a person's looks have no bearing on the dangers being posed. Again, the aim of a small target approach is to affect the opponent's freedom of choice. You could simply lower your height or look weak, talk funny, ask silly questions, whatever it takes for you to be someone other than a big, strong opposing force to be reckoned with. The small target approach is not just another simple deception found so readily used on the streets like the classic preemptive strike. The use of a deceptive strike is not a part of the energy world, because there is no focus on the speed of the one system. The preemptive strike is highly effective, yes, but it will not make the grades when facing a group of attackers. The energy world difference is the ability to mentally disconnect with your attackers by stopping the mind wasting time on thoughts aiming to control the attackers. This is achieved by suppressing the desire to attack the attacker by outrunning the attack. The aim is to stay in a flow state, that is maintaining your focus on moving through the weaker layers of resistance at speed. This runs counter to the wisdom behind our need to fight, further confounded by our need to dominate other people at the cost of safety and freedom. Simply envisioning this strategy as a method to avoid hesitation and a way to drive yourself towards the center of the attack is not enough. It is not some magical technique. If you consider the small target approach as an isolated technique in a sea of the infinite, you have really limited your vision of its possibilities. Training the idea in an isolated case, such as one-on-one to prove its success, does not ready you for a real situation. The in-hall technical approaches so regularly used by traditional martial artists will be death to this idea. It's designed with continuous motion in mind, helping you to freely progress through a sea of safe zones in a very short amount of time in search of an exit. What is not expected by interested pundits is their strong attachments to their social conditioning to micromanage every interaction and engagement at the cost of responding to the big picture. Any focus on the closest attacker's skills has little to do with the application of the small target approach. It is an approach, not a technique, and relies on the attacker's current conditioning to be their biggest flaw. I only hope the attacker welcomes mental darkness as an advantage. In summary, you can move freely because you have not made a commitment to connect with the attacker's propositions. Also, you will not stand to attention and confirm the threat by simply going off on a tangent that did not involve the attacker as such. You could say you are there but not there at the same time. It is only when you have stopped your progression to an exit by acknowledging the problem you are faced with the realization that you cannot leave without injury. It is like not opening the door to the attacker's proposition so that your attacker has no opportunity to get into your head. The beauty of real-time responses is that they make you feel small and very difficult to grab. It is really comforting to know the bigger the attacker, the more likely they will fall for the rouge.